verse number 10. Anekavastra-nayanam Aneka-adbhut darshanam Aneka-devyabharanam Devyane-ko-dhyata-yudham. So the verse translates to, with many mouths and eyes, with many wonderful visions, with many divine ornaments, with many uplifted weapons. So let's take this up word by word. So Anek is recurring in this verse and the next verse. So, Anek means many, numerous, endless. Okay. So Anek, Avatrak means mouths, Nayanam is eyes, Anek, many, Adbhut, wonderful, Darshanam, sights, Anek, Divya is divine, Abharanam is ornaments, Abhushan, Divyani is Divya, Udyat is uplifted, so in the position of fighting. Okay. Ayudham is weapons. So the verse translates to, with many mouths and eyes, with many marvelous visions, with many divine ornaments, with many uplifted divine weapons. So let's chant it together. Anekavaktram nayanam Anekarshanam Anekadevyaparanam So Sanjay is continuing to describe what Arjun is seeing in Krishna's cosmic vision. So Arjun sees many, numerous, endless mouths and eyes, many wondrous sights, many ornaments, divine ornaments, and many divine uplifted weapons. So it's like, see, Krishna is showing his form to Arjun, and he's communicating like an artist, the form. So first, the broad outline of what he wants to cover is being displayed, and then he starts to show the within that form. So like it was almost like as if he was coloring that grand vision. So first, what is revealed to us is the grand scale and vastness of the cosmic form, which, as one mentioned, Sanjay is describing by repeatedly using the word anek. That means you cannot count. Now, anek means many or several, but it also means countless. So there it leads to almost like the sense of infinitude or limitless here. So now we have to also understand what's happening here. See, just the way when we have a mighty spectacle in front of us, a wondrous place. So you want to absorb it all in. It's something like those of you who've been to the Ajanta caves, and especially the caves number 1 and 2, they're so beautiful that you enter the cave, and once you get used to the darkness and get used to the light which is used within the cave, the paintings are so marvelous that you want to absorb it all in. And then, so first you take the magnitude of those paintings, and then you move on to the detailing of those paintings, right? So we are so overwhelmed initially with the beautiful, complex art surrounding that we go around, looking from one end to the other end, and nothing is actually kind of registering. We're trying to take it all in. So that exactly is the state of Arjun's confusion when he beholds the Lord's vision. Also, Arjun's state has to be understood because his friend and his peer has suddenly transformed himself into this colossal being with infinitude, faces, eyes, and mouths. So Arjun is actually not knowing where to look, and Sanjay is only narrating what he can see through Arjun's mind. Now, also suggesting as to what is going to come ahead of in the vision, Krishna is displaying both sides of his personality. So the two things that we talked about after the many mouths and faces and wondrous sights, we are talking about the ornaments, the fine jewelry and ornaments, which is a sight which is very pleasing and beautiful. Then we are talking about the weapons, uplifted weapons, which is another a contradictory aspect of his personality, where he's suggesting that he can use the destructive force if necessary. So what is happening here is that Bhagavad Gita appeals not only to the intellectual seekers, it is also appealing to the, or caters to the devotional seekers. The devotional people always like big sights and a lot of pleasantries, uh, decorations, etc., good forms. So both this verse and the next verse are actually addressing the devotional seekers, where in this verse specifically, ornaments are symbolizing peace and happiness, and weapons are symbolizing war and sorrow. And of course, the use of word anek, where we are talking about limitless, infinitude, we are talking about that is something that will appeal to the intellectual seeker, where you can think of the infinite reality, because someone who is intellectual, that kind of thing appeals to such a person, right? Also, ornaments, as I mentioned, symbolize peace and happiness. Weapons symbolize war and sorrow. So we are covering the, peace and war, happiness and sorrow, misery and happiness. So we are in this form, we are Krishna is actually representing the infinite pairs of opposites. That is the nature of the terrestrial world. So that was verse number 10. Let's move on to verse number 11. Devya malaya ambardharam Devya gandhanulepanam Sarvascharyamayam devam Anantam Vishvato Mukham. So, wearing divine garlands and apparel, anointed with divine fragrant fragrances, full of all wonders, resplendent, endless, facing all sides. And let's take this up word by word. So, the first one is Divya Mala Ambara Dharam. So, Divya is divine, Mala is garland, Ambar is garments or dresses. Dharam, Dharna is wearing. So Divya Mala Ambara Dharam, the first word of the verse, 11, means wearing divine garlands and apparel. Then the second word, Divya Gandhanulepana. So Divya is divine, Gandh is fragrant, Anulep is anoint yourself or apply. So Divya Gandhanulepanam is anointed with divine fragrant scents, fragrances. Sarva Ascharyamayam. Sarv is all, Ascharya is wonder. So Sarva Ascharyamayam becomes full of all wonders. Devam is resplendent. Anantam is endless. So here instead of anek, we are using endless straight into that infinitude. Vishvato Mukham is wish facing the world or facing all direction. Mukh is face. Right? So Vishvato Mukham becomes facing all directions or everything. Right? So this is what the verse translates to. Let's chant it together. Devya Malaya Ambardharam Devya Gandhanulepanam सर्वाश्चर्यमयं देवम् अनन्तं विश्वतोमुखम्. So again, this verse is catering both to the intellectual and the devotional seekers. So you'll find on one hand the divine garlands and apparel, and on the other hand we are talking of infinitude or endlessness and facing all directions. So let's take this. For the devotee, the Lord is wearing the garlands, the divine garlands, divine apparel, clothing, and is anointed with the divine fragrances. The Lord appears resplendent and full of wonders. Now, the garlands, apparel, and fragrances would really not appeal to an intellectual seeker. So, the words that for an intellectual seeker would be Anantam Vishwato Mukham, sorry. This is what caters to an intellectual seeker. Anantam is endless, limitless, boundaryless. So, such a supreme being, this is the Lord's form. So, when we are using Anant, that means it has to be formless and actually goes beyond the organs of perception. So, when the intellectual seeker is reading the Bhagavad Gita, they say, okay, it's just Arjun's mental image that is being discussed here. And this image is possible for Arjun because of the divine power that has been given to him by Lord Krishna. Vishwato Mukham means with face on all sides or facing all directions. So this implies the all-pervading nature of God. Again, anything which is all-pervading cannot have a form. So the intellectuals understand that the cosmic vision cannot be a physical form before Arjun. And the person that such a seeker will read it from that perspective. A devotee will talk about the garlands and the apparel and the fragrances and see God from that point of view. The point is, it doesn't matter which approach you take. You should use the approach that works for you, which aligns you with that God, that one God. So with that, let's move on to verse number 12. Devi Surya Sahasrasya Bhavedugup Duthita Yadi Bhasadreshi Sasayataha Bhasatasya Mahatmana. So the verse translates to, if 1,000 suns, SUNS, were to rise simultaneously in the sky, that splendor would be the splendor of that exalted being. So let's take this up word by word. Divi is in the sky here. Surya Sahasrasya. So Surya is sun, Sahasra is 1,000. So Surya Sahasrasya becomes of 1,000 suns. Bhavet were. Yugpat, which means rise simultaneously at one time. Uttitha is rise actually. So Yugpat is at once or simultaneously. Uttitha means arise. Yadi, if. Bha is that which we used, which signifies light, which we understood in the word Bharat last time. So it's that same light. So splendor. Sadrishi, like. Sa, that. Sayat would be Bhas. Bha again is light. So Bhas, of splendor, of light. Tasya, his. Mahatmanaha, exalted being. So if 1,000 suns were to rise simultaneously in the sky, that splendor would be like the splendor of that exalted being. Let's chant it together. Devi Surya Sahasrasya Bhavedugap Dutitha Yadi Bhasah Drishi Sasayatah Bhasatasya Mahatmana. So see, God's effulgence is actually limitless and it cannot be described. So, in order to describe it, a simile is required. And that is exactly what this verse is. Now, when we see the sun, and especially at noon, it's very difficult for us to actually look at the sun directly when it is at its zenith, 12 noon sun. You cannot look at the sun, it's so bright. What to say of 1,000 suns that are shining at the peak simultaneously? So the brilliance of 1,000 suns blazing together renders a supernatural or a transcendental vision, a vision that is beyond the human perception. And the simile of 1,000 suns that Sanjay is using here is expressing his perception of the splendor of the cosmic form that has no parallels. And also, interestingly, this was one of the verses of the Bhagavad Gita that was quoted by Robert J. Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, when he saw the result of that bomb during at the test site. This was one of the verses, and another one also appears later in this chapter. So with that, let's move on to verse number 13. तत्रेकस्थं जगत्कृत्स्नं प्रविभक्तमनेकधा अपश्य देवदेवस्य शरीरे पाण्डवस्तदाः. So the verse translated to there. In the body of the god of gods, Pandav then saw the whole world with its manifold divisions resting in one. Let's take this up word by word. Tatra is there. Ekastham, resting in one place or together. Jagat, world. Kritsnam, whole, complete. Prabhivaktam, divided. Anekadha, anek is in many, anekadha becomes in many ways. Apashyat, saw. Deva devasya. So Dev is God. The second Dev is of God, gods, the plural celestial gods that we keep talking about. So Devasya becomes of God of gods. Sharir is body, so Sharire becomes in body. Pandav is Pandav, name for Arjun as one of the Pandavas. Tada, then. So there, in the body of the god of gods, Pandav then saw the whole world with its manifold divisions resting in one. So let's chant it together. Tatrekastham jagat kritsnam prabhivaktamanekadha अपश्य देवदेवस्य शरीरे पाण्डवस्तदा. So Sanjay continues to speak what he's seeing through the mind of Arjuna. Now, Arjun sees the entire cosmos with all its divisions in the body of the god of gods or the Lord, the Brahman, resting in one. So this is like he's seeing the entire cosmos in a limited area. And see, you may recollect that Krishna had done this earlier also during his childhood when he had stolen butter, and Yashoda ji opens his mouth. You're telling lies and show me your mouth. It would be full of butter. And then she sees that cosmic form, and she's overcome by that spectacle. So you might recollect this. So it is the same form that Krishna is now revealing to his dear friend Arjuna. Now, when we say God of gods, we are referring to the various gods and goddesses that represent the manifested powers of that one unmanifested Brahman. So, this clarity we must have. So, when we are saying in the body, or let me just quote it, Dev Devasya Sharire. So, in the body of the God of gods. So, the plurality has become actually one in that God. So now, and we have been discussing this also earlier, that Dev means something which illuminates or is a sustainer, which shows the light. And in our tradition, gods and goddesses, the plural, represent the manifested powers of that unmanifested Brahman. And they refer to the smaller or the relative goals or the relative ideals that we set in our life. This you may recollect that we had been doing in the earlier chapters 3, 4, and 5, and especially in the Yajna chapter, how to convert everything into a form of offering to the Lord. So have smaller goals or relative goals, and then change the nature of your goals and make them bigger. So the celestial gods actually cover the entire sphere of human activities. So, from the time in our tradition, from the time that a child is born till the time a person dies, we always have some prayer, yajna, havan, ritual, so that we align with that supreme reality through that particular ritual. So the verse is so that way we worship. For example, if we are looking for knowledge, then you worship goddess Saraswati. To remove आजकल गणेश जी का चतुर्थी, मतलब we are all celebrating Ganesh festivals. So वो विघ्न हटाते हैं. So whenever you want impediments to go from your endeavors, you worship Lord Ganesh. Lakshmi ji is the goddess of wealth. Not only these gods, we also worship the elements. The sun god for nourishing us, Agni Dev, Vayu Dev, and so on and so forth. And actually, that made us respect the environment. So, because we were praying to those gods, we were always respecting the environment also, which is what nourishes us. So, the verses subtly bringing out the monotheistic nature of our worship. We worship one God. So let us not be confused that we have this millions of gods and goddesses. Those millions of gods and goddesses are celestial gods, which represent our limited endeavors. So someone who is looking for power will worship one god. Someone who is looking for wealth, that is the basic aim, will worship goddess Lakshmi. Someone who is looking for knowledge, will worship Saraswati ji. So that's how we put in different gods at different places. So when you see a person who opens his shop in the morning, will do bow down before Ganesh ji and Lakshmi ji, one for taking away impediments and the other one for making profits, good profits in the day. So we must understand this. Moving on to verse number 14. Tatah sa vismayavishtho Rishtaroma Dhananjaya Pranamaya Shirsa Devam Kritanjalir Bhashataha. So the verse translates to, then he, Dhananjaya, struck with wonder, with hair standing on end, bowing his head to the Lord, with palms joined, spoke. So let's take this up word by word. Tat, then, sa, he, Vismaya Vishtaha. Vismay, wonder. So Vismay, becomes struck with wonder. Hrisht Roma. So with hair standing on an edge or having goosebumps. Dhananjay, name for Arjun, winner of wealth. Pranmaya, having bowed down. What? Shirsa, his head. Devam, to God. Kritanjali. Anjali means joining of hands, and with joined hands, that means in a manner of reverence. Abhashata. Bhasha is speech. Abhashata, he spoke. So then he, Dhananjaya, struck with wonder, with hair standing on end, bowed his head to the Lord, with palms joined, spoke. So let's chant it together. Tata sa vismayavishtho Rishtaroma Dhananjaya Pranmaya Shirsa Devam Kritanjalir Bhashataha. So Arjun, or Dhananjay as he is being referred to in this verse, sees the cosmic lord of the form of the Lord. He is wonderstruck, and with the sight, he has goosebumps, or his hair stands on end. Now, see, Sanjay has been speaking, I think, from verse number 8 onwards, right? So now the extent of the shock is reduced, and Arjun is gaining his faculties back and is mustering the energy to start speaking again. And he bows in reverence his head and joins his palm to that divine form. So basically, the gesture of bowing our heads and joining our hands is what we normally refer to as namaskar. Now it is symbolic. The palm actually symbolizes the individual or the jivatma, and the base of the palm represents the Atman, and the 5 fingers actually represents the 5 sheaths that we have. We had covered it some time back, and the 5 sheaths are what a body consists of. So we have the sheaths are also called the kosh. So one is the food sheath or the Annamaya kosh, which is the gross body, the vital air sheath or the pranamaya kosh. Then the mental sheath is the manomaya kosh, and the intellectual sheath is the Jnanamaya kosh, and the bliss sheath or the Anandamaya kosh. And all this after after all these sheaths, this is, we are moving from the outer body to the inner self. Then we come to that Om, which is it's represented by Om, that supreme reality or the Brahman, which is the base of the palm. So that is the significance of saying a namaste. So joining the palms actually signifies humility and the unifying reality of all individuals. So when we are doing a namaskar, we are underlying and indicating that common truth in all of us. Now, that means Arjun here is humbled in this verse. And Arjun is he's a valiant Kshatriya warrior, and there would have been very, very limited instances in his life where he would have been humbled. Now, this is one incident where he sees the entire universe in part of that cosmic form. So that cosmic form is putting his Arjun's individual accomplishments in the right perspective, and he realizes that they're nothing compared to what he is seeing just now. So all his pride is gone away. So the how we can interpret it as we implement it in our lives is that when we start getting a swollen head, or we think that we have achieved something, or I've won this prize, or I've done this, or that is one extreme, or when we feel that our personal problems are depressing us or weighing us down, we should do what Arjun did: fold our hands and humbly bow our heads to that supreme reality, God. So Arjun is bowing down before Krishna before he starts speaking. So that brings us to the last verse for the day, the 15th verse. Arjuna uvacha pashyami devamastav devade sarvanstadata bhuta vishesha sangan brahmanamisham kamalasannastham ऋषिं च सर्वानुर्गाश्च devyanah. So now Arjun spoke, "O God, I see in your body all the gods of various classes, beings of various classes. I see Brahma, the Lord, based on lotus seat, and all sages and divine serpents." So let's take this up word by word. Arjuna Vach is okay. Arjun said, Pashyami, see. I is implied. So I see. Devan, gods, plural here. Devan, gods. Tav, your. Dev, one god. So he's referring to Krishna here. Oh God. Deh is body. Dehe becomes in the body. Sarvan, all. Tatha also. Bhoot, Vishesh, Sangan. So Bhoot is beings. Vishesh is specific categories. Sangan is hosts. So Bhoot, Vishesh, Sangan becomes host of various beings. Brahmanam is Brahma, Lord Brahma. Isham, the Lord. Kamalas Stham. Now Kamal is the lotus. Asan is seat. Stham is seated. So Kamala San Stham means based or seated on the lotus seat. Rishin, sages. Cha and Sarvan, all. Urgan is serpents. Cha and divine. Divyan is divine. So Arjun said, or Arjun spoke, O God, in your body, I see all the gods, beings of various classes, Brahma, the Lord based on lotus seat, and all sages and divine serpents. So let's chant it together. Arjuna uvacha pashyami devanastava devade sarvanasthada bhut vishesh sangan brahmanam pisham kamalasanaस्थं ऋषिं च सर्वानुराग च devyanah. So now, straight from Arjun's mouth, we hear the first reaction on seeing the cosmic form. Till now, the last few verses were by Sanjaya. And also, see, the meter of the verses have changed. The chanting has changed because now more syllables are there in this verse and the next set of verses. So when our emotions are high, we either keep quiet or we start speaking non-stop. So Arjun is in a hurry and to express what he is saying. So till now he was quiet. So Arjun is coming out of his silence and speaks at a fast pace to describe what he sees. Now, Arjun refers to Krishna as God and says that in your body I see all gods, host of various beings, Lord Brahma on a lotus seat, all sages and the divine serpents. So gods we've already covered. They refer the various celestial gods, which we include, which we covered in detail just now. And sages are talking, actually refer to the Saptarishis, which we had covered in the Vibhuti Yog chapter 10. And they include the great rishis like Vashisht and so on and so forth. And we had also covered the serpents in that particular chapter. And the serpents include Vasuki. Now, when in the previous chapter, when we were talking about them, then Lord Krishna was expressing how he is the best in each of these categories. So he'd gone on to say that amongst the Saptarishis, he is so and so, amongst the serpents, he is so and so, and so on and so forth. Right? So then we were talking about that Brahman in all these categories. So that was a different concept. Now Arjun is not seeing them all in different places. He sees them all situated in the Lord's cosmic form. So there it was in chapter 10, it was a one to many, how that one Ishwar permeates or pervades everything that we see. In chapter 11, we are looking at the many to one, how everything is going into that Brahman. So it is that the visualization is just the other way around. Now, when we are talking about, the sages, we're talking about the serpents, we're talking about the gods, what does it indicate? See, the sages lived on earth. The deities live on a higher plane. And actually, the serpents live on a different plane. So Arjun is realizing that he is seeing many worlds which are beyond the earth and beyond human capacity of vision. So that is one significance. Secondly, he sees Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is the creator. And so he is supposed to be the first god that manifested out of that one, out of Brahman. And he is seated on the lotus seat. So the lotus is actually representing that supreme Brahman from which everything is emerged. So Lord Brahma being seated on the lotus seat means or implies that Lord Brahma arose, or, came out or arose from that imperishable Brahman. And Arjun is not only seeing Lord Brahma, the creator, but his entire creation. So, in the cosmic form, Arjuna is seeing the creator and his creation. And he is also realizing that Krishna is beyond the two. He's away, he's outside the creator and the creation process. Then, and this aspect we had covered in the Akshar Brahm Yoga, chapter 8. And then we had also discussed the cycles of creation and dissolution and so on and so forth. So, how that Brahman is actually outside the creator and the creation, or the creator and the creation exist within that Brahman. So, so that is how this has to be understood. And actually, that is what it means. Now, one thing I would like to bring to your notice is that we use the word Isham, and I'm interpreting it here as the Brahman. Okay. Ish can also be interpreted as Lord Shiv, in which case it would mean the dissolution process. So, from that context, you can take it to mean that Arjun saw both the creation and the dissolution in the cosmic form. So, both interpretations are fine. They're actually talking of the same thing. So, it doesn't matter what appeals to you, you think of it from that point of view.